Morning everybody, how are y'all doing today? I'm doing great myself because, you know what, this one is gonna be a long one, ladies and gentlemen. But in all seriousness, yeah, the video we're going to be taking a look at today is like 18 minutes long. I'm not sure how much of it I'm going to cut out or speed up, but I'd imagine not a whole lot. So definitely before we start, go ahead, grab yourself a snack, a drink, whatever you need. Have you done that? Alright, good. The video we're going to be taking a look at today is a review of Hi-Fi Rush, calling it a bad rhythm game. And as you saw from the thumbnail, when it comes to likes to dislikes, they are getting absolutely incinerated. And after you guys see this video, I think you're gonna understand why. Now look, I can be the first to admit none of my videos are perfect. They're all far from it, in fact. You know, I don't always think about everything to the extent that I should before I say it, and sometimes it makes me sound like an idiot. But I'm just gonna say this video we're gonna watch today makes me look like Albert Einstein by comparison. So yeah, without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into this.
Microsoft and Bethesda dropped a surprise game last week on the 25th called Hi-Fi Rush, and we played it, and I'm gonna let you know what I think about it here. My name's Little Bobby with 5 Gaming Direct. Normally, I script out my reviews. You've probably seen some of them if you watch this channel. Talon has complained about them on Twitter, and how long they can be. I am not doing that today, frankly put, because I do not want to waste any more of my time on Hi-Fi Rush than I already have. Hi-Fi Rush to me has been nothing but a miserable experience. I did not enjoy anything about this game aside from the visuals. The visuals are very impressive. It looks very nice. It's very flashy. Outside of that, the gameplay is stale and boring. The platforming and exploration is horrible.
So right off the bat, you can tell this guy's not very fond of this game. And obviously he's gonna spend the rest of the video going more in depth on his points. I will say right now though, I will give him one small thing. The platforming could definitely be improved a little bit. It definitely feels a little stiff. I don't know what it is, but Chai's jumping just feels a little too vertical. I don't know how to describe it. It almost feels like his forward momentum almost completely stops every time you jump. So some platforming sections can feel a little stiff. So I will give him that one thing, and I'll refute his other points more in depth when he gets into them later.
I want to talk about the platforming specifically because the platforming feels like it was done in 1996. I think that the original Crash Bandicoot games had better jump physics than Hi-Fi Rush does. I absolutely dreaded every single time I saw a platforming section just because it felt so terrible to do platforming in this game.
Okay, so like I just said, the platform is not exactly stellar. It's definitely clunky. But I think saying you dread every time you have to do it, that sounds like a bit of an overreaction. Like, obviously, your opinion is your own and you're entitled to it. But I am also entitled to disagree with that opinion. And honestly, I feel like a very easy fix for this problem would have been allowing you to chain dashes in midair. Like, you know how on the ground you can chain 3 dashes in a row if it's synced to the beat? I feel like you should be able to do that in midair, where if you time it wrong, then you just fall, but if you time it correctly, you can do 3 dashes in midair. Unless you can, and I'm just bad at the game, in which case, cool. But again, I haven't been able to.
Now, in terms of the combat in this game seemed like it was going to be really interesting, and I was so interested when I saw this. I was like, oh my goodness, that looks very cool. The problem is that it got so boring for me so quickly because it's a hack and slash game that forces you to take a certain amount of time in every single encounter. And what do I mean about that? Well, every time you hit the attack button, it's supposed to be, you know, on the beat, and that gives you extra damage. But it's always on the beat. There's nothing outside of the beat. Sometimes you have to wait 2 beats if you do a heavy attack or whatever.
It's a hack and slash rhythm game, and you're upset that you have to time your attacks to the beat. Honestly, I could just save myself the next few hours of my life and end the video right here. I think that statement explains itself. The whole point of combining a rhythm game with a combat game like Metal Hellslinger or Hi-Fi Rush is to sync your attacks to the beat so you can deal more damage and have an easier time. If you want to, you can spam, which, surprise, surprise, this guy actually did end up doing. doing, but you're gonna have a much harder time if you do. The whole point of a rhythm hack and slash or a rhythm combat game in general is to reward you for attacking on the beats and having good timing. Also, to say that it's always on the beat, there's nothing outside of it, that's a complete lie. When you progress a little bit into the game, you come across these sort of mini boss enemies. Like there's this one robot that's kind of like a samurai dude, and occasionally they'll do this thing where they'll lock you in a one-on-one with them, and basically little lightning bolts will appear, and they'll appear in like a certain beat. It'll be like boom, 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 whatever, you get the point. It has a random timing for each attack, and then you have to parry on the exact same beats that they do the attacks. And if you do every single one perfectly, then you'll get to one-shot the enemy. I think a little bit later in this gameplay, actually, there's going to be an example of that. Some like little flying drones come out, and then I have to parry their attacks. Just keep an eye out for that. If you were confused by my explanation, you'll see there.
But outside of that, it's just hitting on the beat. And when you hit on the beat, and that's all it is, just quarter note beats, that to me is so boring. If you guys don't know this about me, I'm a music teacher. I've been a guitar player for almost 25 years. I've played piano for like 18, 19 years. I learned a whole bunch of instruments in college, and I was really hyped, like, oh man, a rhythm game where it's like action, maybe you can combine like different rhythms, triplets and 16th notes and whatever in your attacks, and that gives you different types of stuff. Nope, it's just 2 different types of attacks, and you have to do them on a quarter note pulse. That to me is like the most shameful waste of potential here, because this could have been such a cool system to really let the player kind of free flow within the rhythm.
Okay, look, on a surface level, only having to work with quarter notes does sound a little bit boring. I understand that. But when you think about this argument for longer than 3 seconds, it immediately falls apart. This game is built around quarter notes. Not just your attacks and to an extent the enemy's attacks, but also for those of you who don't know, what you can do as you go through this game is you get currency, and you spend that currency to buy new combos that you can learn. All of the combos relying on this quarter note system. For example, maybe instead of just spamming left click, you would do left, right, left, 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 and then that would produce like a super powerful shockwave at the end. Or maybe right, left, right, right, and then it does a ground slam. Kind of like Sony's Spider-Man game if you've played that. All of these combos rely on you timing your attacks with quarter notes. If they were to shake it up and add like 16th notes and 8th notes and stuff, that would ruin the combo system, because then they would have to add all these brand new combos to account for all the different time measures and the different beats and stuff. And then on top of that, there's already so many combos, it's hard for me to keep track of them just with the quarter note stuff. Once you start throwing in 8th and 16th notes and all this stuff, it becomes overly complicated, and I have to start questioning, how would they even do that? Would different levels just have different beats and stuff? If so, again, that overcomplicates things, because then we have to completely adjust our play styles depending on what the developers would choose for the level. You see what I mean? On the surface, it sounds like a good idea, but when you really think about it, this would be a disaster. It would just be way too confusing in a game that's ultimately not meant to be very complicated.
And create their own rhythms and create like cool combos based on the rhythms that they come up with, but instead they copped out and made it just so that it's on the beat. And then the only time it really diverges from the beat is when you have to like parry, and then it sets you up, and then it becomes like a rhythm clapping exercise, right? Like a copycat exercise. In fact, it's literally an exercise I do with a lot of my music students who are like 8 years old. And it's just so dull. I ended up just tuning out. I didn't care about anything with the rhythm or any of that. Another big part of this game is, yes, you have to do it on quarter notes. And if you don't know what a quarter note is, right? If you're not a musical person, a quarter note is just like the beat of a song, right? When you hear that, that's what you're doing the entire time. And that does not change. And I get why it doesn't change. It makes sense why it doesn't change, because you cannot ask a casual gamer to keep altering how fast and slow they go depending on the song. But what this leads to is this leads to a game full of songs at the exact same tempo that do not change too much, because if they change too much, they're going to get distracting, and that's going to pull the player out of being able to keep on the beat.
This guy is actually the master of disproving himself. He spends all this time complaining about how the game is only on this one quarter note beat the whole time, and then explains exactly why that's the case. And also, I don't know if it's just me, but the way he said that whole thing just sounded really condescending to me. It's like, oh, you can't ask the casual gamer to keep up with that stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm being soft or something, but that just rubbed me the wrong way. I don't know what it was. It just gave off this whole like, oh, I'm so smart, I'm so good at music. I understand you couldn't possibly ask those filthy casuals to understand. And also, yes, it's quarter note beats the whole time, but it's not like it's the same exact song for the whole time. If it was one song throughout the entire game, okay, that is a valid criticism to bring up. But no, it's not. It keeps changing songs. They just happen to all go off of quarter note beats. Because surprise, surprise, that's how the game was designed. Again, just like Metal Hellslinger.
Because they're a casual player. This game is clearly made for casual players, non-musicians, and that's okay. I get that's what you want. You want to appeal to the most people possible, but it's also a waste because they could have let people who are musically trained or musically inclined really explore how far they could go with this game, and they didn't do that. It's just sad, and it just left me with a foul impression of this game right off the bat. I dreaded every second of this game. It took me a week to play through this 8-hour game because I just did not want to play it.
I don't even know how to describe this anymore. This dude's basically saying that this game wasn't like intellectually stimulating enough for him, which is why he didn't enjoy it. And again, he disproves his own argument. He's saying, oh, they could have let people who are super musically talented go as far as possible. My dude, how many super musically talented people do you think are actually gonna play this game? Yes, I'm sure there's people who play instruments in like school or something who play this game. But just before you complain that they didn't push you hard enough, you were saying that they're trying to appeal to the widest audience possible. I would say they balanced it pretty well. Keep it all on a quarter note beat, and then have optional combos you can purchase to help keep the game fresh and keep it challenging, while also rewarding you for overcoming the challenge. Like, your complaint is that it doesn't challenge the musically talented enough? Did you even try any of the different combos? Not like they're hard to do, but it's a lot to keep track of. And sometimes staying on the beat can be difficult unless you have the accessibility mode turned on. But who knows, dude? Maybe you're just too smart for me. Maybe I'm just an idiot and that's why I struggled from time to time.
Because it is one of the most boring things I have ever played. And I just don't know how to put it other than that. Another thing about this game is that the story is okay. But a lot of people had an issue with Forspoken, right? And I've heard the argument, oh, well, it's realistic graphics, it's meant to take itself seriously, you know, and so like it's okay in Hi-Fi Rush because Hi-Fi Rush is like, it's cartoony, it's silly, it's supposed to be stupid. And it's like, well, okay, if Forspoken is having that same kind of thing, obviously it's supposed to be kind of silly too, right?
I mean, yes, that is the argument. Forspoken is trying to take itself seriously. Hi-Fi Rush is not. And let's just say Forspoken wasn't trying to take itself seriously. The dialogue is still cringe. It's like they just Control-C, Control-V the F word into the script at random moments, and then that script got approved. Honestly, Forspoken felt like a really bad Marvel movie, where it was trying to take itself seriously, but it also wasn't at the same time, and it never really worked out. Also, we've talked about this on the channel before, but context is incredibly important because in Forspoken, it's this 21-year-old criminal who gets transported to a world with like flying dragons and all these dangerous monsters and stuff. You know, graphics are relatively realistic looking, you know, if you have a 4090 and the newest generation of Intel CPU. It just, Forspoken's world and context and all that does not fit with the dialogue whatsoever. Forspoken is basically if somebody took a cartoon and then made a live action version of it, but tried to keep all the like slapstick and cartoony elements in the live action version. It just doesn't translate very well. Meanwhile, Hi-Fi Rush has a much more appropriate art style, a much more goofy plot, and it's consistent with what it wants you to think of it. Forspoken keeps flip-flopping between being serious and being like, holy crap, I'm fighting freaking dragons. Meanwhile, Hi-Fi Rush, even in the serious moments, goofy stuff still happens. Like when Shai confronts one of the villains around like halfway through the story or so, know. He's wearing a big shark costume in the middle of a concert, and then he's trying to have like an opening chat with the villain before the fight begins, but he's trying to get the suit off at the same time. If Forspoken was consistently goofy, it wouldn't have been so bad, but the fact that it's trying to be like super goofy and like relatable to the youngins with all the cursing and stuff, but then also have a serious plot, it just doesn't work. Also, Forspoken's main character is just not likable while Chai is. He's really cocky, but in a charming way. But whatever, I think I've said enough about this. Let's get back to the video.
Now, don't get me wrong, I haven't played Forspoken. I've heard not great things about it. Lethal, apparently, he did enjoy it quite a bit. At least what he told us. He said near the end, it got really, really engaging and really fun. And that's one of those things. But for Hi-Fi Rush, a lot of what makes it engaging is that it's flashy. That's what makes it engaging for the average player. And I've seen some people who are calling for this to be like a Game of the Year nominee.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And before anybody asks, no, I did not edit that in. That was him. Which, yeah, I definitely think based on what we've seen so far this year, this could still be a Game of the Year nominee. Don't get me wrong, we've had some great competition since then. The Dead Space remake and the Resident Evil 4 remake are great. But I think Hi-Fi Rush is still actually a legitimate contender. And also, he brought up the fact that, oh, it's really engaging because it's flashy. That's true to an extent, but also the gameplay is really fun, the combos are fun to perform, and the music slaps. This isn't a case of all style, no substance. This is a lot of style and a lot of substance.
I am dumbfounded how anyone could call this a Game of the Year nominee. This game doesn't ever take itself seriously, even in moments where you think, oh, hey, they can take themselves a little seriously right now because the stakes are being amped up. They never do. There's not one point where you feel like there's danger or anything like that within the story. There's moments where like what should be like serious stuff happens and then they make a joke at it like immediately. All of it just, it's too much, like it's that Marvel writing, right? People complain about Forspoken and the Marvel writing. This is that exact same Marvel writing, except it literally does not stop. It does not stop.
Yes, but again, it works here because it fits the style and context more. Think about it this way, would something like South Park or SpongeBob be as appealing if it was live action instead of animated? Probably not. Cartoony dialogue should go along with a cartoony game. But again, this guy is just disproving himself. This is exactly what I was just saying. Forspoken's dialogue doesn't work because it wants you to take it seriously, but it also has some of the cringiest dialogue ever, which it expects you to laugh at. When the main character says, oh my god, there's freaking dragons, the writers expect you to be like, ha ha ha, that's a good one. And guess why the goofiness in Hi-Fi Rush doesn't stop? Because it's meant to be goofy. Within the first like 20 to 30 minutes, the game lets you know full well it does not take itself seriously whatsoever. It's just trying to be a fun game with likable characters and funny, sometimes cringy dialogue. Like very early in the game when Peppermint's giving you like one of the tutorials, I can't remember, I think it's on like level 2 or something, or maybe it's level 1. Whatever, I haven't played the level it's on in a while. The point is, she explains something to you, and then Chai says, you sound like a video game tutorial. The second you heard that line, you should have immediately known this game was not going to take itself seriously at any point. I mean, yes, it does have like its plot twists and, you know, dramatic reveal and stuff like that, but that's just how stories work. And the game is also self-aware in the way that the characters, I think I said this earlier, they react to what Chai says. Peppermint groans every time he makes a corny joke or something like that. It shows the game doesn't expect you to actually laugh at it. If the game expects you to laugh at something, it gives you the time to do so. But if it doesn't, it has a character say, wow, that was cringe, or, you know, something like that. And honestly, my guy, if this style of like comedy and self-awareness is too much for you, maybe just go back to teaching 8-year-olds the piano. This is clearly not the type of game for you.
At all. Okay, so another part of the presentation with this game is that they really are trying to interject a lot of the characters, but the characters are like boring, right? I don't care about any of these characters. There's like Macaron, right? He's supposed to be the big kind of physically intimidating guy who's actually really pleasant and nice, and he builds a robot who talks to you and is always brutally honest, so he's just a dick. And then there's Peppermint, and she's just a dick. And then there's Corsica, who is originally a bad guy and then becomes a good guy. And I just, at no point do I find myself caring about any one of these characters, any one of the stories.
I mean, I don't think you're really supposed to have a very deep connection with any of these characters. Again, this is not a game that takes itself seriously. The plot is not very deep. It's a pretty basic corporation mind control plot, where a guy doesn't want to make an actual good, appealing product, so instead he decides to mind control everybody so they'll keep buying his bad products, and justifies it by saying, oh, we're freeing them. When they made this plot, I don't think they had like God of War in mind, where you're supposed to form a deep emotional connection with Kratos and Atreus. I'm pretty sure they just wanted to make likable, goofy characters who are in a conflict that's like somewhat serious, but ultimately goofy and completely unrealistic.
They almost did something interesting in the game. This is a spoiler alert. At the end of the story, near the end of the story, you end up hearing the entire time you find out that Peppermint A is the sister of the bad guy and the daughter of like this mythical, legendary scientist that they keep talking about throughout the whole game. And near the end of the story, it shows that the scientist who's Peppermint's mother is alive, and she looks like she's a bad guy. She's like, oh, actually, I know all about this evil mind control program that the bad guys are making. I know all about it, so don't worry, daughter. And I was like, oh, this is actually interesting. And no, what happened is she's just being mind controlled. So like, there was one interesting turn they could have made with the plot here, in that Roxanne could have actually been like the evil person who decided, you know what? I feel like I didn't do that. I feel like I deserve more from the world. You know, it could be like an interesting like shift, looking at this person who's supposed to be the really good person, and oh, you know, it's sustained by Peppermint, okay, well, her brother who's like the bad guy. Push the mom out of the company, push Roxanne out of the company, and took over. And that's why we couldn't really, actually, she kind of faked that and ended up, you know, being evil herself, but didn't want anybody to know. And they copped out on that, and that she's being mind controlled by the same thing. She's actually good. She's a good person. Not one interesting idea that they had was thrown away. And again, thrown away for jokes. Hi-Fi Rush, people saying this is game of the year. No. I don't know what game you guys played.
We played the same game you did. The difference is we didn't go into a cartoony rhythm game that's all about beating up different robots with a guitar, expecting a super deep and interesting plot. It's very obvious the whole focus of this game was style and gameplay, and then they made some likable characters and a decent enough plot. A game like this not having the most enthralling story does not make the game bad.
Ironically, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about in this game that were so funny to me because this game is like almost self-aware. There is a part where you're fighting it's like the second or third boss. I'll see if I can let the editor know exactly what it was. But he talks and he says, the masses only care about Flash. And that's what this is. This game is all just flash. There's no substance to it. The combat system is bad. The platforming is bad. The exploration is generic. It's like something out of maybe early PS2. The level design is not great. We expect better things, or at least I expect better things out of a game coming out in 2023.
No, the game is not almost self-aware, it is completely self-aware. I'm starting to think you just did not pay attention to any of the dialogue whatsoever. This game is self-aware at almost every single opportunity. But also, yes, this game has plenty of substance, but of course you didn't talk about it. And as for the whole, the masses want explosions thing, yeah, who would have guessed when people are playing a video game, they want to have fun with it. They want it to be nice and flashy. I mean, the whole point of a video game is to be fun, and most of the time to be able to do things that you can't do in real life. Imagine a video game that doesn't have any of its own flash or substance or anything. Does that sound very fun? No. Want to know what is fun? Explosions. Lots and lots of explosions. And for people who don't really want that as much and want like a more deep story or whatever, those games do exist. But this game is not one of those and is not trying to be one of those. You're basically criticizing a game that's not meant to have a super deep story for not having a super deep story. Now, if say a game like God of War did this, where they were supposed to have a super deep story, you were supposed to care about all the characters, and then they failed at that, that would be a thing to criticize about that game. Like, with your logic, I could criticize God of War by saying, oh, it's too realistic, it should be more cartoony, and the plot is way too deep, and the game should be more self-aware and not take itself seriously. It's a stupid argument. Criticize a game if it fails to be what it's meant to be.
But yeah, people just want flash. That's all they want. And that's what this game is. It's really good about being flashy and trying to be quick and witty and funny, and it's not. But people seem to have dialed into this, I guess. You know, it's kind of that lowest common denominator thing. And I'm not trying to offend you if you enjoyed this game. Like, you're welcome to enjoy what you want. But this is clearly made to just cast the widest net and entice the most people.
First of all, yes, it is quick, witty, and funny. Second of all, how entitled and stuck up are you to say that this game is for the lowest common denominator? You're coming off as such a pretentious jerk, it's not even funny. If you like Hi-Fi Rush, you're not an intellectual, you're part of the lowest common denominator. Only people like you would find these jokes funny. No, dude, want to know what is the lowest common denominator? Somebody who makes a terrible video game review, and in the process of making said terrible review you basically insults everybody who likes the game, saying they're a part of the lowest common denominator. Well, I guess I know what I'm titling this video. This is the worst Hi-Fi Rush review on the internet or something like that.
Right? You don't even have to be very like on top of the rhythm when you're playing, right? There were times where I like literally saw like, how early can I practice this, or how late can I press this, and how late will it let me get away with this? You don't have to keep a very strong rhythm. Half the footage here, I'm literally just spamming my X button because I'm seeing, oh, will it just still count and line up? And there's sometimes where it does, and there's sometimes where it doesn't. And it's like, if you just spam, you have like a 50% chance of getting like 75, 80%, or even higher on the rhythm. And so they don't punish you for missing or anything, aside from maybe you do a little bit less damage. But yeah, that's not good game design.
Now, hold on, this is a little bit hypocritical, because I could have sworn earlier in the video you were complaining that you had to stick to a quarter note measure, and you couldn't go any faster or anything, but now that you can go faster and the game doesn't necessarily punish you for it, that's a problem to you. Just seems a little bit hypocritical. But I just love that this dude cannot stop contradicting himself. He says, oh, this game doesn't punish you for not keeping time with a beat or whatever, and then immediately after says that you do less damage. But I'm actually starting to wonder how much this dude actually utilized the combos, because if you spam too much, you're gonna mess up the combos, and if you don't hit the final part of the combo in time with the game, you don't get the big effect you were building up to, and you essentially wasted the combo. Has there been a time in this video where this guy hasn't proven himself wrong?
In principle, if you're telling me I have to do a rhythm and then you really just don't care, you're just trying to make it seem like you're doing something, that's weak to me, that's a cop-out. Another moment that I thought was really like hilariously non-self-aware was when Kale says the line, do you know how hard it is to make something that people want to buy? Because I feel like that is absolutely Microsoft's issue right now. I get it that people love this game, or they say they love it, but this game's been out a week. I finished in 8 hours, like looking around for everything, taking my time between levels and stuff like that. I finished in 8 hours, and apparently it has like a 4% completion rate in a week, right? So people say what they want. A lot of people are clearly not finishing this game. I'm sure that'll go up, but this is not a game that takes very long to finish, especially if you enjoy a game like this, you're gonna go right through it, right? But the problem again to me is that like they seem like they were doing something interesting and it just felt so flat, right?
For everybody's sake, including my own, I just sped that whole part up by 300%. Basically, a summary of what he said was the game has a low completion rate, so I guess a game having a low completion rate a week after it comes out is bad, or it means the game is bad or something like that. And apparently the villain in the story saying, do you know how hard it is to make something that people want to buy, has to do with like the length of the game or something. I don't know, it's really confusing. It feels like a bunch of thoughts just meshed together, which is why I skipped it.
Another huge issue in this game is that every single level is like an hour long. It is like an hour long, every single level. It'll be like a hour long level and then a 10-15 minute boss fight. And I'm gonna have our editor, whoever edits this, just put in footage of the final boss fight. That was like a total ripoff of Spider-Man. You're on the top of like a tower in a lightning storm, and the bad guy grows like Dr. Octopus tentacles. Like, come on. But you know, the thing with it is that
before we get to the thing, I'd just like to point out that the math doesn't really add up there, because he's saying he beat the game in like 8 hours, but there's 12 levels in the game, and he said each one took an hour, and a bunch of them had like 15-minute boss fights. So the math doesn't really add up there. Kind of a nitpick, but just wanted to point that out. But I don't really see the problem. It's not like the game forces you to do the entire level in one run, and then if you have to quit out for whatever reason, you lose all your progress. You can save and quit at any point and then jump back in later on. In fact, I'm pretty sure if you quit out in like the middle of the final boss fight, and then when you're back in the main like home base area, if you talk to your crewmates while you're there, they'll be like, why did you leave in the middle of the fight? We gotta defeat this guy. There's a video showing off all their dialogue. It's pretty funny. But yeah, I don't see why having long levels is a problem, since you can just save and quit. I mean, another game that had really long levels was Doom Eternal, and that was another fantastic game. So yeah, I wouldn't say that's a very valid complaint.
every single fight after a certain point ends up with you just like sitting around waiting. Enemies will have shields, or you'll have to do some kind of interaction, and most of the time it is shield, right? If you hit them, they're either not going to take damage or they're going to hurt you, and you just have to use your partners and wait, right? And a lot of the times it'll be like 2 or 3 people, and you'll have to use a partner 2 or 3 times each. Sometimes if you miss with Macaron, right, his attack, that's it. Now you're going to be sitting and waiting for his attack to recharge so that you can hopefully hit the next attack and get the shield down so you can actually start fighting the enemy instead of just dodging and jumping around, waiting for an attack to come up from your partner.
I mean, that's kind of a fair complaint, but then again, at the same time, there are upgrades you can buy which reduce the cooldown of your partners. Although I will say, I think how it should have worked is if you miss the attack with like Macaron, let's say, you just instantly get him back. It shouldn't actually count unless he hits the enemy. So I like half agree with you on that one. And as for the whole, oh, you're waiting and dodging around stuff, again, you can buy the upgrades to make them recharge faster. And from what I remember, a lot of the time there were other robots to kill while you were waiting for your partners to recharge so you could break through the shields on the big boys. So you know what? I'll give you half a point for that one.
This is just really, really feels bad. I just couldn't get over it. Now, like, I know a lot of the times we talk on this channel about like how we do prefer Sony, right? But Xbox has done some really great things in the last few years.
Oh, there we go. Now it makes sense. They prefer Sony. Now that whole thing I said earlier about this guy complaining that these characters don't have like the depth and emotional attachment, whatever, of God of War suddenly makes a lot more sense. And I feel like I need to clear this up. I don't have a problem if you prefer Sony. It's just that in a review where you're giving a really bad critique of a game, and then you point out towards the end of the review that you prefer the rival company, it's just not a very good look.
Scorn, I thought Scorn was really great. I didn't like the combat, and I said very clearly, Scorn, having like a puzzle game, that would be one of my favorite games ever played, right? I still thought it was great. I would still probably give Scorn like an 8 out of 10. You know, the only miss there was the combat. The look was great. You know, the fact that it was so like ambiguous with the story and everything, it wasn't clear story, kind of left it up, or kind of left to interpret it how you will, interpret the events and everything, and then try and break down everything through world building. I thought it was great.
But honestly, with Hi-Fi Rush, I feel like they really went for style over substance, and it was just so bland and boring. Everything about it was predictable. The one twist in the plot where I actually thought they might make things interesting turned out to fall through. The combat is slow. For a hack and slash, it's just bad. For a rhythm game, it's just bad. The platforming is terrible. The exploration is extremely mediocre. It's not terrible, but it's extremely mediocre.
Yeah, like I said earlier, the game is lots of style and lots of substance at the same time. And again, while not the best, the platforming is certainly not terrible. As for the exploration, yes, it could be better. But at the same time, this isn't one of those like super deep open world games like Jedi Fallen Order or Elden Ring where you're supposed to explore every nook and cranny. This is a series of linear levels that sometimes have secret things for you to find where if you find them, you can definitely get an advantage by upgrading your stuff more. And also, I don't know why you're so hung up on the story. I understand it's not the most enthralling story ever, but for what this game is, the story is perfectly fine, and it's definitely not the make or break. I don't think most people bought this game expecting it to have a fantastic story or something. I think just taking a look at the demo they gave at the Xbox Developer Direct, you could tell the story was not a huge priority.
I remember games 25 years ago had more like secret pathways and stuff than this. So overall, Hi-Fi Rush to me, I don't understand how it has the review scores it does. I just think it's incredibly dull. And it doesn't do anything interesting with any of the ideas it presents. It never takes itself seriously, which people are saying that's what makes it great. You could tell it doesn't take itself seriously. Well, it's like sometimes you present moments in the story that could be taken seriously, and they don't do that.
Yes, they don't do that because you're not supposed to take it seriously. Sure, it's gonna have its dramatic moments and whatever for the sake of the plot, but at the end of the day, this is supposed to be a fun game with likable characters, a somewhat decent story, and it's supposed to have a ton of charm, which it absolutely does. My guy, I think your ultimate problem was that you took this game more seriously than the game took itself. If a game is not trying to take itself seriously, and then you try to take the game seriously, of course you're not gonna like it. How about this? You said you prefer Sony, so instead of complaining that this game doesn't have the incredibly deep story you want it to, go play a game that does, and that is trying to have that, and that is meant to have that. This is clearly not the game for you.
Tango is also great, and I just hate to say this. It's like, you know, it's just having to say that a company that's made some stuff that I generally like made something that I hated. And again, this is coming from someone who's a musician. Once I realized that there was not going to be anything interesting with the rhythm, I just stopped caring. I tuned out completely because there's nothing for me there.
Damn, no wonder this guy hated the game. The second His Royal Highness the musician realized that there would not be anything besides quarter notes, he just stopped caring. My guy, if you're gonna be so hard on a game that the second it doesn't appeal to your musical expertise, you just tune it out and stop caring, are you really expecting to like it? Enjoying things is about mindset. It's like Under the Mayo's Elden Ring review and that whole disaster. If you go into a game with a negative attitude and you just like tune it out and ignore it after it does like one thing that you don't like, of course you're gonna hate the game. Maybe you should just stick to something like Friday Night Funkin' or Guitar Hero, my guy.
No, interesting ideas. Like if you want a rhythm game, you need to do something with the rhythm, not just, oh yeah, hit the buttons on the beat, because that's boring. Long story short, we may get demonetized for this, but I'm going to say fuck this game. Yeah, just fuck this game. Like, I could not stand it. By the time I finished, I was literally like, am I done? I was audibly in my play space. I was going, am I done with this yet?
Jesus Christ, bro, calm down. Going so far as to say F this game, like, my god. You hate this game so much, you risked your video getting demonetized just to hate on it. Did Shinji Mikami steal your girl or something? Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, by the way. But good lord, this dude actually, like, I don't even know what to say because I've said he hates this game already. I guess he has, like, a vendetta against the game or something like that. I don't know. This is one of the weirdest, most spiteful reviews I've ever watched. Thank God it's almost over.
Because I just didn't want to play it. I honestly almost said, I'm not going to review this because I just can't stand it.
Honestly, you should have went with your gut on that one, my guy. Posting this review is arguably the worst mistake you will make in your YouTube career. Please just stick to teaching 8-year-olds the piano and whatever else. Video game reviews clearly are not your thing. Then again, it gave me a half-hour plus video, so I guess that's kind of nice. But yeah, anyway, guys, that's basically the end of the video. He just does his outro and says that, oh, you can leave a dislike and tell him why he's wrong. He's not going to change his mind or anything. Which over 500 people very happily did, including myself. But yeah, anyway, guys, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching this longer video. I haven't done a longer video like this in a little while now, mainly because I don't have as much time to because of school and everything. And this is actually one of the very few videos that has taken me multiple days to make. Most of the time, I'm able to record all my videos in a day and then have them out the next day for the public. Or I have them out the day of. If you're a member, consider doing that, by the way. But in all seriousness, yeah, this was a much longer video, so thank you all so much for watching. Like the video if you like it, dislike it if you didn't like it, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will catch you all next time.